I'm the storyteller, and tonight you're about to hear something that might make you think twice before turning off the lights, before the door opens. Like the video, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is, because sometimes when you listen matters just as much as what you hear. I was 23 when this happened, still a senior at Ohio State, driving back home to Cincinnati for the weekend. It was early November, one of those nights when the rain doesn't just fall, it pounds your windshield like it's got a score to settle. I'd left campus later than I should have, got caught in the downpour halfway through the drive, and the highway was nearly deserted except for me, my old Toyota, and a few semis roaring by in the opposite lane. I wasn't in any rush. I had some true crime podcast droning through my crappy speakers, a half-eaten bag of pretzels in the passenger seat, and a travel mug I'd already drained dry hours ago. I was exhausted but jittery. You know that wired, tired feeling when you're running on stubbornness alone, just counting down the last stretch of blacktop before home. I spotted him somewhere around 12:15 a.m., maybe closer to 1/2 past. He was standing by himself just past an old exit sign that looked like it had been there since the 70s, paint flaking off in strips. At first, through the sheet of rain, I thought he was a marker or milepost or maybe a trick of the lights. But when my high beams caught him, I saw clear as day a man standing dead still in the downpour, clutching a battered duffel, one arm raised like he was either shielding his eyes or trying to flag me down. Something about how motionless he was in that relentless rain made me lift my foot off the gas. I never pick up hitchhikers. My mom's lectures drilled that into my skull years ago. But that night, I don't know. Maybe it was the storm, the empty stretch of highway, the hour, the way he looked so out of place. I pulled over before I could talk myself out of it. I rolled down the window just enough so the rain wouldn't drench me, and asked if he was okay. He looked about late 60s, deeply lined face, a shock of white hair plastered to his forehead under a faded ball cap, wearing a dark flannel that clung to him like wet skin. He didn't smile, didn't say much of anything, just nodded once and said his car had died a few miles back. Said he was trying to get to a motel off exit 214. Told me his name was Merritt. No last name, no small talk. Just Merritt. There was this moment right before he climbed in where he just stood there by my open door, rain pouring off his shoulders, studying me like he had to make sure I was real. Then he tossed his dripping duffel in and slid into the seat. He didn't even shiver. The smell that came in with him was something I still can't describe, right? Wet wood, stale smoke, something earthy like the crawl space under an old house. For the next half hour, we didn't say a word. Merritt didn't ask where I was going or thank me for the ride. He sat with his hands folded tight in his lap, staring out the window like there was something way out there in the dark only he could see. When the lightning flashed, I'd glance over. He never flinched, never even blinked. Just sat there calm as a stone, like he was waiting for something I wasn't invited to know about. I tried half-heartedly to ask where his car was exactly. Did he need me to call someone? But his replies were clipped, flat, automatic. It's back there. Don't have a phone. Just need a place to sleep. The way he said it made my skin itch too rehearsed, like he'd memorized the lines for a part he didn't want to play. I dropped him at the Hilltop Inn, this rundown roadside place I'd passed 1,000,000 times, but never given a second glance. The neon sign buzzed weakly through the rain. 5, maybe 6 cars in the lot. He didn't say goodbye. Just got out, grabbed the duffel, and walked into the front office without so much as a look back. I was about to pull away when I saw a wallet half tucked under the seat, soaked on one corner, or the rain had gotten to it. I didn't even think. I threw the car in, reverse, rolled back into the same spot near the flickering sign. I don't know why part of me didn't want the night to be over yet. Part of me wanted to see him again to make sure he was real, or maybe to make sure I was. I didn't open the wallet, didn't even peek at the ID. I just stepped into that stale lobby, smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, the hum of a vending machine the only sound besides the rain against the glass. There was one of those brass bells on the counter. I tapped it. A moment later, a short woman in her late 50s, shuffled out hair, pulled back tight eyes ringed with exhaustion. I told her I'd just dropped off a man named Merritt, older guy, flannel shirt duffel, and that he'd left his wallet in my car. She just stared at me for a second like she was waiting for the punchline. Then she shook her head slowly. "You're joking, right?" I told her I wasn't. She leaned closer, voice dropping. "What did he look like?" I gave her the rundown, tall, older, lined face, gray flannel bag slung over one shoulder. Her mouth tightened like she'd just bitten a lemon. "Honey, nobody like that's checked in here for months." I told her I'd just seen him walk through that door less than 5 minutes ago. She backed up, shaking her head. Then she disappeared into the back and came out with this battered file folder. She flipped it open, turned it toward me. There he was. A black and white printout, slightly out of focus, but clear enough. Same man, same flannel, same blank eyes staring straight through the camera. My stomach dropped into my shoes. "That's him. That's Merritt," I said, but my voice sounded tiny. The clerk pressed her lips together. "That man's been gone since August. Sheriff's office found his car abandoned off the highway. Never found him. Just gone." I pulled the wallet from my pocket. Suddenly it felt wrong in my hand, like it was burning a hole through my skin. I flipped it open. The ID inside was ancient, a brittle state license from 1987, picture yellowed. But it was Merritt. Same face, just decades younger, hair darker, but those same eyes, same stiff posture. I pushed it across the counter. She didn't want to touch it either, just wrapped it in a plastic bag and mumbled something about calling the sheriff in the morning. I stumbled back to my car, head pounding. The rain had slowed, but the air felt thicker, somehow pressing in on my chest. The seat was still damp where he'd sat. I turned the ignition, but didn't pull out right away. I just sat there staring at the lobby door, half waiting for him to walk back out. But nothing. No shadow, no voice. Just the neon sign sputtering in the darkness. Driving off felt wrong, like I was leaving a thread hanging that would never be tied off. I must have checked my rearview mirror 50 times on the way back to Cincinnati, fully expecting to see him sitting there, soaked, silent, staring. But the back seat was empty. The road looked different in my headlights, warped somehow, too dark at the edges. I couldn't sleep when I got home. I replayed every second, the silence, the mechanical answers, the feel of that old ID between my fingers. Who was he? Where did he go? What did he want? I even called the Hilltop Inn a few days later, hoping for I don't know what. The clerk said she'd turned the wallet over to the sheriff's office. They couldn't find any record of the ID. No last name. No address. It was like Merritt had never existed at all. It's been almost 2 years since that night. I still think about him every time I see someone standing alone by the side of the highway, soaked and waiting. Maybe he was a ghost. Maybe he was something else. All I know is I've never stopped for another hitchhiker, and I don't think I ever will. I'm Jason. I'm 37 now, but this happened when I was 32. Back then, my wife Hannah and I had just gotten back from visiting her cousin up in Idaho, and we were driving back to Colorado, cutting through Wyoming at night. We left late, about 11:15 p.m., thinking the roads would be dead quiet and we'd make good time. And that was true, until it wasn't. Back then, we didn't have our daughter yet. Just us and our old Labrador Milo curled up in the back seat. Life felt simple, normal jobs bills, nothing worse than an occasional fight about groceries or whose turn it was to clean the yard. If you'd asked me that day what the scariest thing in my life was, I'd have said maybe heights, or maybe my tax return. But after that night on that road, it changed the way I see the dark forever. It started near Rawlins, Wyoming, close to midnight. If you've ever crossed Wyoming after sundown, you know exactly how it is. Just endless cracked asphalt, huge black sky, and every so often an animal's eyes catching your headlights before vanishing into the brush. We were about 45 minutes past the last gas station when Hannah leaned forward and pointed out headlights in the rear view. I figured fine, another car, pretty rare out there, but not impossible. But the truck, a black pickup, looked old. Maybe a Chevy or a Ford, started gaining on us fast. No blinker, no passing lane, just zoomed right up on our bumper like it was trying to shove us down the road. I tapped the brakes a bit the way you do to say, hey, back off. Nothing. It stayed glued to us, high beams on full blast, flooding our car like we'd driven onto a stage. Hannah twisted around, shielding her eyes, muttering, "What is this guy's deal?" I half laughed it off, something about road rage flicked. My blinker drifted onto the shoulder, tried to wave him by. He didn't pass. He slowed down too, kept right behind us like a hunting dog staying on a scent. I pulled back onto the road, trying to ignore the way my chest was tightening. I hit 60, 70, then 80. But that truck never dropped back, never sped ahead. Just there. Those brights in the mirror so strong I couldn't see my own wife's face next to me. Hannah twisted all the way around, trying to catch a glimpse, license plate, driver, anything. But the glare was so bad we couldn't make out a thing. Just that square shape and those two blinding lights. I started to feel it then that this wasn't just some jerk tailgating. This felt like something else. Something that made my throat dry out. So I took the next exit. Some skinny 2-lane county road dipping east through old ranch country. My thinking, if he wasn't after us, he'd keep going. But the second I turned, so did those lights. No hesitation. Hannah whispered it then, soft but sharp enough to cut through my gut. "Jason. He's following us." And that's when it all shifted in my head from annoying to terrifying. That back road was pitch black. No reflectors, no driveways, just barbed wire fences slicing fields that hadn't seen a tractor in decades. I checked my phone, 0 bars. Hannah tried hers, nothing. She kept staring at the screen like maybe if she glared at it long enough, a single bar would pop up. Then the lights disappeared. Just blinked out. 1 second there, next second gone. I felt my heart stop. Milo whimpered in the back seat, sensing us freeze up. Hannah's voice cracked when she asked, "Where did he go?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. I slowed way down, half hoping he'd turned off somewhere. Checked the mirror, empty blackness. Then headlights, right back on. But now they were closer. Way closer. No sound, no warning. He must have coasted in the pitch dark until he was kissing our bumper again. I floored it, tires skidding on gravel, as I yanked a right onto a dirt cut-through I didn't recognize. Dust poured over the windshield. Milo barked like mad, clawing at the window. Hannah braced her hands against the dash, eyes wide. I had no idea where that dirt track went. Didn't care. It twisted through what looked like abandoned grazing land. Dry grass slapped the sides of the car. Old fence posts flickered past like teeth. I risked a glance back. The truck was still there. Same distance, getting closer. Not fishtailing, not losing speed, just sticking to us like it could smell our fear. Hannah's voice was shaking, almost breaking. Jason, please do something. But there was nothing to do. No gas station, no neighbor's porch light, just us and whoever or whatever wanted us off that road. I jerked the wheel left, hoping to lose him. He mirrored me perfectly, like he knew I'd do it. Up ahead, I spotted a break in the fence half torn down. Maybe cows pushed through years ago. I didn't think I just punched it. We bounced over broken posts, rattling so hard I thought we'd shake apart. Hannah screamed. Milo slid off the seat yelping. The truck didn't even slow down, punched right through the same gap, dust cloud rolling behind it like a storm. That was when I knew. This wasn't road rage. This wasn't some drunk rancher. This was deliberate. We tore through that pasture, saw old bones scattered in the dirt, maybe a cow skull or a deer, I couldn't tell. An ancient windmill creaked overhead, blades limping in lazy circles. Up ahead, an old shed or barn rotted half into the ground. I slammed behind it and killed the lights. Hannah clutched Milo to her chest, whispering prayers I hadn't heard since her dad's funeral. We waited and waited, and nothing. Just the windmill creaking and our breathing. I cracked the window, trying to hear anything. Tires, footsteps, the tick of an engine. Nothing but that old metal squealing in the breeze. I whispered I'd take a peek. Hannah clamped onto my sleeve, but I promised I'd be quick. I stepped out, cold air hit my face like water. I crept to the corner of that sagging barn. My boots sank into dirt. There it was, the truck, about 50 yards away, parked, dead still. No headlights now. But there was a glow, tiny red, like a cigarette cherry. But it wasn't in the cab. It was in the bed of the truck. And it looked, I swear, like a person sitting back there, motionless, watching. My legs almost gave out. I backed up slow, didn't dare breathe too loud. Every step felt like an hour. When I got back inside, Hannah saw my face and knew I'd seen something worse than headlights. What is it? She whispered. I just said, he's there, just waiting. We sat. 10 minutes, 15. That glow didn't move. The truck didn't growl to life, just there. Finally, Hannah whispered, we need to run. She was right. We couldn't sit there forever. Gas was low. No one was coming. I remembered an old ranch sign, maybe 5 miles back. We grabbed Milo, both phones, a flashlight, slipped out the passenger side, stayed low, didn't breathe, didn't look back. We crossed that open field by moonlight. Every coyote yip in the distance made my spine lock up. Every dry branch snap felt like a gun cocking behind my ear. We trudged forever. Then a glow on the horizon. Porch light. Real light. A farmhouse. We ran for it. An old couple answered. Jim and Marlene. They let us in, no questions asked, like they knew we were running from something bad. Jim gave me his landline. I called the local sheriff, tried to explain a truck with no plates, no face, no motive. I heard myself say it and felt crazy. Cops showed up almost an hour later. They searched the field, found no truck, no tire tracks, no fence damage, no sign we'd ever left the road at all. To this day, I don't know who was behind that wheel, or what, or why. But I haven't driven that Wyoming stretch again. Hannah still jolts awake sometimes, whispering about a red dot in the dark. And me. Some nights I swear I hear tires crunching out by our fence line. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's waiting. If you're ever out there near Rollins at night, do yourself a favor, keep driving. And if you've ever seen that truck too, tell me below. I need to know we're not alone. I was 34 when this happened early October, when that sticky Texas heat still hangs on your skin like wet laundry long past when it should have broken. I'd just quit a job that drained the life out of me and left behind an even worse breakup back in Austin. No finding myself nonsense, I just needed out. Away from people. Away from the noise in my head. I didn't have a plan, just a beat-up Subaru Outback, a cooler stuffed with sad sandwiches, and enough restless energy to keep me drifting west toward nowhere in particular. Maybe Big Bend, maybe Marfa, if I felt brave. Maybe I'd just keep driving until the road ran out. That morning, I'd been behind the wheel since before sunrise, stopping only once for gas near a tiny town called Devine. I remember it because the sign for the gas station looked like an old Polaroid left out in the sun too long. One pump was working. The other had yellow caution tape flapping in the breeze. The attached store smelled like stale coffee and tire rubber, perfect for a person trying to disappear for a while. While I topped off the tank, I saw her standing near a dusty old silver Camry hood, popped arms crossed, tight hair plastered to her forehead. I figured she was just some local with a dead battery. But the way she kept glancing down the highway, not at her car, but at the horizon, like she was expecting a ghost or a demon, it made something in my gut clench. She was wearing a faded brown hoodie, despite the heat sleeves pulled halfway over her hands, fingers twitching nonstop. I told myself to mind my business. I'm not the kind of person who picks up strangers. But when I went inside to pay for water and stale trail mix, she followed me in. Her voice was soft when she asked, "Are you going west?" I should have lied. Should have said I was turning back east. Should have said anything except the truth. But before my mouth could stop me, I nodded. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her name was Kayla, or at least that's what she told me. She offered me $20 for a ride as far as a tiny town off Route 90. I told her to keep her money. I still don't know why. Maybe I recognized the terror behind her eyes. Maybe I just didn't want her standing alone in that sun-bleached lot. She hardly said a word when we got rolling, just clutched this canvas bag in her lap like it was carrying her whole world. Every few minutes she'd twist around and stare out the back window, flinch when a big truck blew past. I wanted to pretend I didn't notice, but after half an hour of that, I had to ask, "Someone after you?" She didn't answer at first, just stared at her knees. Then, so soft I barely heard her, she whispered, "If a man named Reed shows up, don't tell him you saw me." The way her voice cracked when she said his name made my throat go dry. I didn't ask more. I didn't have to. I'd worked at a crisis center back in college. I'd seen that brand of fear before, and now it was sitting next to me in my passenger seat. I told her she was safe, and I meant it. I didn't know how wrong I was yet that Reed was already looking, that helping her would turn a quiet road trip into the scariest thing I've ever done. We pulled into this old diner around 1 p.m., metal roof, cracked Coke signs, a flickering neon open in the window. Place was called Bessie's. Only 3 cars in the lot. Quiet felt safe. I figured she could get some food, calm her nerves. Maybe I could too. Inside smelled like burnt bacon grease and drip coffee older than the waitress pouring it. The woman, maybe late 60s, fake red hair and a tight bun, stuck us in a booth by the window. Kayla ordered fries, didn't touch them. Every time the door chimed, her shoulders twitched. The hush around her made the air feel thick, like we were sitting underwater. I made the mistake of going to the bathroom. 5 minutes, maybe less. When I came back, the booth was empty. I'd been walking for about an hour, and I hadn't seen a single car. Finally, a set of headlights appeared in the distance. I stuck out my thumb, hoping whoever it was would take pity on me. The car, a beat-up station wagon, slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder. I jogged up to the passenger window, and the driver leaned over to roll it down. He was an older guy, maybe in his late 50s, with graying hair and a baseball cap. His face was lined, and he had that look of someone who'd spent too much time on the road. "Need a lift?" he asked, his voice gruff. "Yeah, if you're headed north," I said. I tossed my backpack in the back seat and climbed in. The car smelled faintly of cigarettes and old upholstery. The man didn't say much at first, just kept his eyes on the road, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. I tried to break the silence. "Thanks for stopping," I said. "Not a lot of cars out tonight." He gave a short nod. "Not a lot of people either." Something flickered there, dark and gleaming. "Thanks for keeping her safe," he said, and his smile made my skin crawl. "I'll take her now." And then Kayla ran. Not toward me, away. Behind the diner, past the rusted trash bins. I didn't think I just bolted. Heard him curse and stomp after us, boots crunching gravel. We tore around the side through weeds and busted bottles, my breath burning in my chest. Behind the diner was just a sliver of scrubby woods. Barely trees, really tangled branches. Dry leaves, old beer cans, and plastic bags tangled in the brush. She ducked through like she'd done this 100 times. I crashed after her branches, whipping my arms. I could hear him behind us swearing, crashing through the brush like a bear. Kayla never looked back. She dropped into a shallow ditch, ankle twisting, but kept going. We pushed through thorn bushes and saplings, scraping skin raw. My lungs were screaming. After what felt like hours, but was maybe 5 minutes, we ducked under a fallen cedar hidden in its shadow. I could feel her heart hammering beside me. She was shaking so bad I thought she'd pass out. I whispered, "Was that him?" She just nodded, eyes wide and glassy. We listened for footsteps, for that heavy breathing. But the woods were silent except for my pulse pounding in my ears. After a while, Kayla muttered, "He put a tracker on me. Didn't think he'd use it this fast." My stomach flipped. "A what?" She dug into her hoodie pocket, pulled out a burner phone. Not mine, his. "Thought I ditched it yesterday." That explained his calm back there. He knew. I told her we needed to get rid of it. She smashed it against a rock, hurling the pieces into the brush. Then she pulled another phone from her tote, no explanation. I didn't ask. We lay there under that tree, hidden in that brittle Texas brush, until I couldn't feel my legs. Then we crawled out, stayed low, moving through the weeds until we found an old abandoned trailer, busted windows, graffiti, a bent satellite dish pointing at nothing. Kayla crawled underneath, shoved her bag into a hole behind the cinder blocks. "If he finds me again," she whispered, "he won't get this." I didn't ask what this was. Didn't want to know. I just knew we had to move. We cut across a dry field, sticking to the shade until we hit the edge of the diner lot. No sign of the denim jacket. Maybe he gave up. Maybe he was waiting. My keys were still in my pocket. The car locked. We circled, wide hearts thumping, and when I hit that unlock button, we sprinted like kids stealing candy. Back on the road, silence pressed between us. I couldn't stop my hands from shaking on the wheel. Rage simmered under my ribs, rage that he thought he could own her in daylight like that. We didn't stop until we hit Hondo. I pulled up to the police station, but she grabbed my wrist so tight her nails dug in. "No cops," she whispered, eyes wide. "He's a volunteer firefighter. They know him. They won't help." I believed her. I didn't need proof. That smile in the parking lot said enough. So I took her to a dusty roadside motel outside town. Paid cash. Made up a name. Left her my backup phone scribbled out the name of a shelter 2 counties over. I didn't stay. I couldn't. But before I left, she hugged me fierce and shaking. "You didn't have to stop," she whispered against my shoulder. "Most people wouldn't." I didn't know what to say. "I'm glad I did," I told her. And I meant it. That night, I drove 100 more miles, pulled into a truck stop at 2 a.m., sat behind the wheel and cried like I hadn't cried in years. A few weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. "I made it. Thank you." Nothing else. No name, no place. I read it 3 times before I deleted it. I don't know what happened to Reed. I hope I never do. But every time I pull into a lonely gas station on a back road in Texas, I remember her, the fear, the fight, the tiny flicker of hope behind all that panic. And I wonder how many more like her are out there waiting for someone to hit the brakes and say, "Get in." I wasn't looking to save anyone, but I'm glad I did. I was working nights as a delivery driver for a third-party app back in October 2021, just after I'd dropped out of college and moved to Nashville, trying to figure out what the hell to do with my life. It wasn't anything glamorous, mostly handing off cold burgers and soggy wings to drunk college kids or exhausted nurses pulling doubles. One of those gigs that gives you way too much time to think and nowhere near enough money to stop worrying. That night, it was creeping up on 11:45 p.m., and I'd already decided this next run was going to be my last. I just dropped off some diner food at a rundown motel by the interstate when my phone buzzed one more ping. Decent payout, but the address was weird. Way out there. A farmhouse listed almost 40 minutes past the edge of town, still barely inside the delivery zone. No gate code, no drop-off note. Just a name, D. Ashcroft, and an old back road I'd never heard of. I remember staring at it for a second. The app always lit up around downtown bars, never out past the cornfields. But I was low on gas, my brain was fried, and I just wanted to get it over with. So I hit. Accept, grabbed the food from this all-night diner, and started driving. At first, it was fine, a couple quick turns off the interstate past darkened gas stations, and those dead quiet neighborhoods with porch lights flickering on timers. Then the street lights vanished, replaced by pure black that my high beams didn't really cut through. I kept an eye on the GPS, but the farther I went, the worse it glitched, rerouting for no reason, spinning the little blue arrow in circles. At some point, my playlist died, and the silence hit me like a brick, just the hum of my tires and the crunch of bugs against glass. Finally, the GPS voice muttered that I'd arrived, but all I saw was this skinny dirt driveway pushing into a wall of trees. No lights, no mailbox, just a graveled path swallowed by brush. I almost turned around, but the address matched, so I eased in, gravel crackling under my tires' branches tapping against my mirrors like fingers. After what felt like forever, my headlights picked up the farmhouse. Peeling white paint roof, half-slumped windows dark. No porch light, no sign of life. I cut the engine but left my lights on. I don't know why, but my gut was whispering I shouldn't be here, that this place was hidden for a reason. I grabbed the bag, stepped out. The air smelled damp and sweet like rotting leaves after rain. The wood porch creaked under my feet, the boards soft and splintery. I knocked. Once, nothing. Knocked again, harder. Delivery for Ashcroft. I called out, voice bouncing off the trees behind me. Silence. I was about to dump the bag on the steps and bolt when I heard it, a floorboard inside, sharp and deliberate. Not wind, not an animal. A shift like weight moving from one heel to the other. I froze, heart banging in my ears. "Hey, just dropping your order here," I called louder. No answer. Then again a creak, but not just one. A few paced out like footsteps crossing a room. My pulse was a drumline. Some dumb piece of me thought maybe it was an old guy moving slow, maybe half-deaf. So I edged sideways, peered through the nearest window. The glass was fogged and streaked, but behind it caught for a second. In my headlights, I swear I saw it a flicker of motion just enough to freeze my guts. Gone in an instant. I backed up. Okay. I'm leaving it right here, I said out loud, voice shaking. I dropped the bag on the steps, turned so fast I nearly tripped. I got into my car, locked the doors with fumbling hands. I was about to reverse when the porch light sputtered on. Not steady, just one weak flicker, like a dying bulb gasping for life. Then darkness again. But that flash showed me something I wish it hadn't, a silhouette. Tall, standing just inside the hallway. No face, no movement, just there, staring. We locked eyes, or whatever you'd call it, through my windshield in that crusted window. 1 heartbeat, 2. Then the light popped out, and the shape vanished like it was never there. I didn't even think. I slammed it in reverse so hard I nearly sideswiped a tree fishtailing down that dirt path, with branches whipping my mirrors. The road back felt endless. My knuckles bone white on the wheel. Every mile I checked the rear view, half expecting to see headlights that weren't mine. Back in the city, I pulled into a gas station, sat there under buzzing neon lights, engine ticking, trying to catch my breath. I pulled up the app, ready to flag the order as undelivered, but it was already marked complete. 5-star rating. The name was gone. No receipt. No trace. Like I'd imagined the whole thing. That's when the nausea hit me, this crawling dread in my stomach. I knew where I'd been. I knew what I'd seen. But it felt like whatever was in that house didn't want to be remembered. I didn't tell anyone that night. Not my brother when he asked why I got home so late. Not my mom when she called the next morning. Part of me clung to the idea that maybe I'd just spooked myself. An abandoned house, some squatter messing with me. That's it, right? But my brain wouldn't leave it alone. Next day, I did something I never do. I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. Didn't even give my real name. Just said I was a driver who got sent out near Brayfield Road and saw something weird at a farmhouse. The dispatcher went quiet when I read out the address. Then her voice came back tight and careful. "Sir, I need you to come in and talk to a detective. Today." That freaked me out worse than the house. Next morning, I sat in a gray room, across from Detective Larson, telling him every detail. The dirt drive, the creaks, the shape behind the glass. He listened, then pinched the bridge of his nose, like he'd heard a bad joke. That farmhouse, he told me, had been raided just 2 weeks before, tied to missing persons cases stretching back years. Supposed to be boarded up, watched. But they'd found signs someone went back, food wrappers, boot prints, broken basement latch. When I showed him my phone, the app was blank, no record, no payout, no customer history. Like the job never existed. They even brought in their tech guy, nothing. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Son, you're lucky you drove off when you did." I left feeling like I'd brushed against something rotten, something that didn't want me there, but did. Sometimes I wonder if whoever, whatever turned that light on wanted me to come inside. It's been years. I haven't delivered a damn thing since. Can't bring myself to pull onto an unlit road at night. If I see a flickering light in a dark window, my chest tightens like a vice. I never got an answer, and maybe that's for the best, but every now and then I wake up from dreams of that shape behind the glass waiting for me to come back. And if you'd have done what I did, would you have knocked one more time? I'm only sharing this because the thought of someone else going through what I did makes my skin crawl. Some stories never leave you, no matter how far you drive. I don't usually post stuff like this, but it's been sitting heavy on my chest for almost a year now. I'm 29, live in Dallas, and last spring I was driving alone to see my old college roommate in Little Rock. I left work late, told myself I'd just power through the night. It's only about a 5-hour haul if you stick to the speed limit. Around 2:15 a.m., somewhere deep in rural Arkansas, my eyelids were fighting me hard. I didn't want to risk dozing off at the wheel, so I pulled into this tiny rest stop off I-30. One of those forgotten ones, single brick bathroom building, cracked pavement, flickering sodium lights that made the whole place look like a bad dream. No vending machines, no attendants, just trees pressing in from all sides, and a silence so thick it buzzed in your ears. But there was only one other car, an old faded tan Buick with rust freckles along the door. Parked 2 spots down. I figured someone was sleeping it off. I backed into a spot facing the bathroom, killed the engine, and let the night wrap around me. Outside, the air was swampy and the cicadas were shrieking like they were warning me. I was scrolling my phone, weighing whether to catch a few minutes of shut-eye or get out and stretch, when I noticed movement in my side mirror. A woman. Older, maybe late 70s. Small, hunched frame, wispy gray hair pulled back in a thin braid. She wore this faded, pale green cardigan that looked way too warm for the Arkansas heat. She didn't look like she wanted to scare me, honestly. She looked terrified herself. I cracked the window just enough to hear her. Her voice was soft and shaky, like she was worried someone else might hear. "Sweetheart, you need to leave," she said, eyes darting over her shoulder at the shadows. "Don't stay here. Please, just get back on the road. Please." I asked her if she was okay, if she needed help, but she just shook her head, whispering again, "Please go now." It wasn't panicked. It wasn't angry. It was desperate, like she'd seen how this ends before and was trying to change it. I thanked her, said I'd be fine. She hovered there another moment, looking at me like she wanted to say more, then turned and walked toward the trees at the edge of the lot. No flashlight, no car keys, no phone. She vanished into the dark like she'd never been there at all. I sat there, engine off, heart thudding, trying to wrap my head around it. Part of me wanted to believe her that something was wrong, but then the stubborn, rational part of my brain kicked in. She was probably confused, maybe homeless, afraid to be alone at night. I decided I'd hit the bathroom real quick and get moving. I grabbed my keys, reached for the door handle, and headlights flooded my car from the front. A big black pickup had rolled in, no front plates that I could see. 2 men inside. Neither of them looked at me at first. Something about the way they pulled in made my chest go tight. They didn't bother with a parking space, just stopped sideways, nose pointed right at my front bumper, blocking me in. The passenger was huge. Broad shoulders, filthy white tank top. He leaned forward, elbows braced on the dash, staring at me through the windshield like he was deciding something. The driver, older, thicker in the middle, wore a sweat-stained ball cap pulled low. I could see the dull orange coal of his cigarette in the dark. No one moved. I didn't move either. Just sat there with my hand locked around the key, not turning it yet, like my body had short-circuited. The passenger opened his door first, slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. He didn't glance at me. He strolled around the bed of the truck, trailing his fingers along the metal, tapping every few seconds. The taps were soft, but sharp, intentional, a signal. The driver followed, rolling out of the truck cab like he'd just woken up from a nap. They shared a quick glance, practiced cold. I knew then, deep down in my bones, this wasn't random. This wasn't two strangers on a smoke break. They were here for something, maybe me. I snapped back to myself and turned the key. The engine sputtered a dead cough that made my stomach drop to my shoes. It caught on the second try, thank God. That second felt like an hour. I dropped it into reverse, but the truck was still there, nose to nose with me blocking the lane. The big guy started walking toward my window, hands in his pockets, eyes flat. He didn't say a word. I didn't wait to see if he would. I twisted the wheel, slammed into reverse, nearly clipped a trash barrel as I swung wide into the space behind me, then slammed it into drive, floored it across the grass, shoulder tires screaming as I bounced back onto the ramp. I didn't look back, didn't care if they chased me. My hands were slick on the wheel, and my heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I drove like that for miles, blowing past exits I couldn't read, too afraid to stop, afraid even to blink. The worst part, I never saw that old woman again. No car hidden in the trees. No sign she'd been real at all, except for the fact she'd been the only thing standing between me and whatever those men had planned. About 40 minutes later, I pulled into a big Love's Travel stop just outside Hope, parked right under the lights near the front door, locked every door, and just sat there shaking, replaying it all, her warning, that truck, the way they moved, like they'd done this before. I dragged myself inside, eventually bought a water just to have something to hold, asked the kid behind the counter if there were any other rest stops open between here and Prescott. He shrugged, told me the only one he knew about got shut down a couple years back. People kept getting mugged out there. Some just up and vanished. They tore most of it down. He said it like he was talking about the weather. I must have stared at him for a full minute. Pulled up my phone in the car after. Sure enough, that rest stop wasn't on any updated maps. Gone like it was never there. But I'd seen it. I'd seen her. And those men, they were real. When I finally got to my friend's place in Little Rock, she looked like she'd seen a ghost just hearing it. Her husband, Jason, used to be a cop. He told me that stretch of highway had a run of disappearances about 10 years back, mostly women, mostly alone, mostly never found. Always last seen pulled over somewhere they shouldn't have been. He said my story was almost word for word like a case he'd read in an old file, same rest stop. I filed a report, but without plates or clear faces, there wasn't much to do. Jason called a friend at the state police just in case. I don't know if it made a difference, maybe it never will. But I know I don't stop at random rest areas anymore. Not even in daylight. I keep my tank above half, playing my gas stops like a maniac. I wish I'd listened to her the second she knocked on my window. I don't know what would have happened if I'd gotten out, or if my engine hadn't turned over. But I know she saved me. Whoever, whatever she was. And maybe she's still saving people. Maybe if you're reading this and it makes you think twice about pulling into some empty lot at 2 a.m., then she's still out there watching the dark, so you don't have to. If this story made you lock your car doors just a little tighter, hit like or drop a comment. It might just keep someone else awake enough to stay alive. They say the desert at night can hide things you don't want to see in daylight, but sometimes it reveals the worst parts of people when you least expect it. I learned that the hard way one night not far from 3 Points. I've been driving a tow truck for nearly 14 years now, mostly along the lonely back roads of Arizona, those endless stretches where the horizon swallows the moon, and you can drive an hour without passing another set of headlights. The night this happened, I was working the late shift, like always. I actually prefer it, less traffic, fewer idiots on the road, just me, the sand, and the occasional stranded motorist who thinks a half tank is enough for 100 miles of nothing. At the time, I was 43, recently split from my wife, just doing my best to stay busy and keep the bills paid. I'd grown used to the rhythm of these nights, the heavy quiet that settles over the desert after dark, so thick that sometimes your own breathing feels too loud. It was a little past 11 p.m. when dispatch called in. A young woman was stuck off Highway 86 about 15 miles west of 3 Points. Her engine had died, and her phone was nearly dead too. Not the place you want to break down, no lights, no houses, just brush dust and the soft yip of coyotes drifting across the sand. I headed out right away. By the time I spotted her hazard lights blinking in the distance, I'd already dodged 2 jackrabbits and a coyote trotting across the asphalt like it owned the place. I pulled up behind a silver Civic, parked crooked on the shoulder hazards, flickering like a heartbeat in the dark. She was standing by the trunk, arms crossed so tight you'd think she was trying to hold herself together. Couldn't have been older than 25, dark hair pulled back in a loose knot hoodie and leggings that didn't look warm enough for that sharp desert chill that seeps in once the sun's gone. She looked more than cold, she looked scared. Not just of being stranded, but scared of something. I stepped out and gave her a small wave. "You the one who called for a tow?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She nodded, but didn't smile. Her hands were shaking. "I'm Daryl," I said. "Let's get you out of here." She told me her name was Kelsey. Soft voice eyes darting over her shoulder every few seconds. Made my gut tighten. I popped the hood and took a look, and what I saw made the hairs on my arms stand up. The battery cable wasn't just loose, it had been pulled just enough to kill the engine. That doesn't happen by accident. I turned back to her. "Anyone mess with your car before it died?" She shook her head quick, too quick, and looked away. That's when I noticed the shadow of a bruise under her jaw, half hidden by her hood. My stomach dropped. I didn't push it, just told her I'd hook her up and get her out. But I moved faster, scanning the empty stretch of road, the brush beyond the shoulder. I just secured the hook when headlights flared in my mirror, coming fast, too fast for this back road. Kelsey stiffened like she'd touched a live wire. Instinct kicked in, and I stepped half in front of her. The vehicle, an old blue pickup, maybe a 2003 or '04, squealed to a stop so close, I felt the vibration through my boots. A tall guy climbed out before the engine died, skinny shaved head hands twitching like they were waiting for permission to break something. "Kelsey," he barked, voice sharp enough to slice the night. "What the hell's this?" She shrank back, didn't say a word, just looked at me like I was her last hope. "You know him?" I asked without turning. She hesitated barely a second, then whispered, "My boyfriend." The words came out flat like she was reading from a script she hated. The guy stepped closer, a grin peeling across his face, but not reaching his eyes. "She doesn't need your help. I'll fix it. Unhook the car." I kept my voice even. "Can't do that. It's not drivable." His jaw ticked. He didn't like that. Guys like him never do. He took a step closer, leaning in just enough for me to smell his sour sweat. "Why don't you unhook it?" he said, voice dripping fake sweetness, and let her decide. I turned to Kelsey, caught her eyes dead on. "You want to go with him?" She froze. Mouth opened, but no words came. Her eyes glassed over, fixed on him like he was a snake about to strike. That was enough for me. "I think she's safer with me," I said. I turned back to the rig. He lunged, hand dipping inside his jacket. I didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. I slammed my shoulder into his chest, felt bone under thin fabric, and shoved him against the Civic. He bounced off it, staggering, cursing. I snapped at Kelsey. "Get in the truck now." She bolted. He came up again, one hand still deep in his coat. I didn't wait, jumped in the cab door, slammed locks down. He slammed his fist on the hood, screaming, but I threw it in gear, the Civic clanking behind as I tore onto Highway 86. Last thing I saw in the mirror was him running after us, swallowed up by the dark. We didn't speak for a few miles, both of us just breathing like we'd run for our lives, which in a way we had. She stared out the window, hugging herself so tight it looked painful. Her knuckles were white. I passed her my water bottle. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, didn't look at me. After a second, she whispered, "Thank you." Not just polite, that was a real thank you. The kind you feel in your chest. I didn't push for more. Didn't have to. 10 minutes later, she started telling me what she could. His name was Seth. They'd dated a few months. She broke it off, but he never let go. Showed up at her job outside her parents' house. The cops said their hands were tied. That night, she was headed to her sister's place in Tucson. Left without telling anyone. Thought she was being smart. Seth must have followed her, pulled the battery cable when she ducked into a gas station bathroom. She came back, car-dead desert all around. When we rolled into a sheriff's substation outside Tucson around 1:15 a.m., I walked her inside myself, explained everything to the deputy on duty. This time, they listened. Maybe because she wasn't alone. Maybe because I was there to swear to every word. They took her statement. I waited in the lobby while she talked. When she came back out, she hugged me, the real kind, trembling shoulders. And all. "You saved my life," she said into my chest. Maybe I did. Maybe I just showed up at the right time. Either way, I still get a chill thinking about how close it was to going the other way. I drove back alone that night, Civic in tow, headlights carving the black desert. My hands were steady. My mind wasn't. I kept replaying that moment, his hand in his jacket, her eyes wide, the silence that could have ended with a bullet. Some nights, towing's just engines and dead batteries. But sometimes, if you're paying attention, you find yourself in the middle of someone's worst night, and if you're lucky, you help them live to see morning. They say you shouldn't pull over for anyone on those empty mountain highways, but back then, I still believed the best in people. Sometimes I wish I could unlearn that lesson. I was 29 when it happened. At the time, I was working remotely for a publishing company and had decided to take a solo road trip from Arizona up to visit a friend in Denver. I'd just gotten out of a messy breakup, and the open road felt like the only kind of therapy I could afford. I mapped my route to cut through some of Colorado's most beautiful mountain passes. It was late October, that weird in-between season where fall clings stubbornly to the trees, but the wind already cuts sharp like winter. I remember that morning clear as glass, because it was the first time I ever saw frost forming on the inside of my windshield. I pulled out of my roadside motel around 7:30 a.m., travel mug in hand, music turned low, just trying to get my head quiet, while the miles slipped under my tires. By the time I hit that particular pass, it was creeping past 2 Sierra in the afternoon. The sun had begun its lazy descent, spilling those rich golden beams over the slopes and ridges that boxed me in on either side. The highway was narrow there, full of blind turns and sudden drop-offs. No real shoulders to speak of, and hardly any spots to safely pull over. Not many cars came that way once the tourists thinned out for the season. It should have felt peaceful, just me, the wind, and the distant hum of my tires. But there was an edge to that stretch of road that made me check my mirrors more than usual. I passed a couple of bright yellow signs warning about falling rocks and urging drivers to stop only for emergencies. I hadn't thought much about it until I rounded a bend and saw a dark green Cherokee SUV sitting half on the gravel shoulder hazard lights blinking in the cold sun. I'd been feeling burned out for months, stuck in that dead zone, where every shot through my viewfinder felt like a tired echo of the last one. The kind of dry spell that makes you wonder if you're done for good. So I figured some real solitude might rinse my brain clean. I packed up my Nikon, borrowed an old 2-person tent from my cousin, threw in a week's supply of freeze-dried noodles, and drove west until every station on the dial fizzed out to static. Big Bend had been on my list forever. Vast, merciless, and so quiet it felt like it could bleach the noise out of my head. I staked out a lonely patch of scrub a few miles off the main trail, a place so empty the rangers probably only swing by once or twice a month. No service, no neighbors, just the hiss of wind scraping heat over stone. That first day was exactly what I'd needed. I hiked until my legs were jelly filled up 2 cards with golden ridges and dusty cactus skeletons, then sat by the fire while the desert sighed around me. When I finally crawled into my sleeping bag, I crashed hard, that deep, empty sleep you only get when the sun's beaten you half to death. Day 2 was a carbon copy. Wake up, eat something bland, hike, shoot, repeat. But that night, the desert changed. The wind that had rattled the tent flapped the night before went dead, calm, leaving the air inside heavy and close like the ground itself was holding its breath. I was half drifting that weird stage where your thoughts smear together when I heard it, clear as if someone was crouched right outside the paper-thin wall. A voice, soft, careful, right by my ear. Ethan. My eyes flew open. For a minute, I didn't move, didn't even breathe. That whisper hadn't bloomed up from some dream. It didn't fade or echo. It landed right there in the darkness, too close, too real. I sat up slow, straining so hard for any sound that my own heartbeat felt deafening. Nothing. Just dry, ancient quiet pressing down. I cracked the zipper an inch and peeked out. The fire was just embers now pulsing orange. The scrub and rocks beyond barely shifted. No footsteps, no shapes. I told myself it was exhaustion, my brain coughing up my own name just to fill the silence. But sleep stayed far away after that. When the sun dragged itself up, I boiled stale coffee and made myself circle the tent part, habit part, self-reassurance. That's when I found it. Just behind the far corner, a single boot print pressed clean into the loose sand. Narrow, cross-hatched tread, nothing like the heavy lug soles of my hiking boots. I crouched there forever staring. No other tracks. No scuff marks leading in or out, just that one perfect step pointed at my tent. Then they stepped out together, shoulder to shoulder, watching me go, not running, not yelling, just standing there, like they'd done this before, like they'd do it again. I didn't let up on that gas pedal for an hour straight. Every blind curve felt like a trap waiting to snap shut. My fingers went numb on the wheel. By the time I found a tiny rest area with a flickering vending machine and a cracked map board, my knees were jelly. I sat there under a dead bulb, my phone finally sputtering to life with a single bar of signal. I called my friend in Denver, told her everything in a voice that trembled like loose glass. I didn't call the cops right away. What would I even say? No one hurt me. No one pointed a gun. But I knew God. I knew that wasn't just bad luck or a random breakdown. That was a snare, a test. I'd seen it in their eyes, calm, practiced, patient, like they'd done it before, maybe many times, like they'd gotten it right before. My knees felt hollow. The walk back to the ranger station felt longer than the drive in. The ranger on shift that morning was an older guy named Roy Deep Crow's feet-faded uniform, the polite patience of someone who's heard every dumb camper story there is. When I told him about the voice and the print, I braced for a shrug, maybe a theory about a prank, a passing hiker, but he didn't shrug. He just looked at me for a long time, jaw working, like he was deciding whether to say what was on his mind. "That campsite you picked, was it near Grapevine Hills?" he asked finally. I nodded. Roy leaned back, thumb hooked through his belt. 3 years back, early March, another solo camper. Same area, never came home. They found his gear tent, staked down, neat fire pit, cold camera still zipped in the bag. Just gone. I haven't opened it once. Some nights I stand in the hallway staring at the closet door, half tempted to dig it out, and half certain that if I do, I'll hear that whisper again. A few weeks later, I dug through missing persons archives online. There are other disappearances, sure, but none that lined up like Ethan's did. Same name, same trails, same camera, same vanishing point. Sometimes I wonder if the whisper I heard wasn't a warning, but a leftover piece of him, whatever scrap the desert let through the seams. I still can't sleep near an open window. Still flinch when I hear my name called too softly behind me. I don't camp solo anymore. I don't shoot desert landscapes. If Roy was right, if the land out there does echo, I figure it's still echoing that man's unfinished story. And maybe next time, it'll want someone to finish it. If you'd stay out there after hearing this, tell me in the comments. I pulled off onto a gravel shoulder near what might have been a pasture, hard to tell in that murk, and killed the headlights to check the GPS again. That's when I heard tires on gravel. I glanced out the side mirror, white Ford F-150 easing up beside my cab. The driver leaned out his window. Older guy, maybe early 70s. Deep wrinkles like dried riverbeds, wearing a battered cap with roll tide faded across the brim. He gave me a grin that didn't reach his eyes and called up, "Need fuel, son," I said. "Yeah," asked if he knew of any station still running out this way, with the power flickering from the storms. He said real casual, "Ain't no stations for miles, but I know a fella who sells diesel out the drum." He's honest. Used him plenty when roads flood. Before I could ask anything else, he flicked his hand toward the dark. "Take the cutoff just past marker 219. Won't be on your map, just watch for the dirt track." Then he tipped his cap and pulled away, slow taillights fading into the gloom. About 25 minutes later, after watching the mile markers like my life depended on it, I found it, or what I thought was it. Barely a gap in the tree line, no real sign, except a half-rotted plank hammered into a post, one word left: rest. I eased the truck in. Right away my gut knotted up. The place looked like a tornado had thrown it together and left halfway through. The so-called rest stop was just a lopsided shack with one wall caved in and a roof that sagged like wet cardboard. An ancient snack machine, gutted and sun-bleached, lay on its side out front. But what hit me hardest was the silence. Even with a storm nearby, there should have been crickets whine through the pine something. Instead, it was like stepping into a room after the music stops. Not dead quiet, wrong quiet. I left the motor idling and climbed down. The air stank of wet iron, and something cloying like syrup left too long in the sun. I scanned the shadows. That's when he stepped out. Tall man, wiry build under a grimy olive tee and cargo pants dark from the knees down, like he'd been wading through marsh. His hair was lank, stuck to his forehead, and his eyes too bright glassy, like they'd pop from his skull if he blinked wrong. He smiled wide, too wide. "Need fuel?" he called, voice scraping the edge of friendly and mocking. He jerked a thumb behind the shack. "Drum's still got good diesel left." I didn't answer, just nodded slow, drifted around the truck like I was checking the tires. That drum was old dented blue metal with a crusted spigot, no hose, no funnel. No way in hell it could fill a rig my size. And the man, he kept cutting his eyes sideways toward the tree line. I caught it in my side mirror. First flicker of movement where the pines thickened. Two shapes weaving between the trunks, keeping low. The way they moved made my mouth go dry. One hunched one taller, both creeping slow boots sinking quiet into the wet leaves. One carried something long and thin. Crowbar pipe rifle. My pulse slammed in my ears. I backed up, casual hand on the door. The smiling man barked out, "Hey there, you good friend," too loud voice echoing off the shack. I didn't bother answering. Swung the door wide, climbed up, slammed the lock down. When the engine roared to life, I saw both shadows freeze, then break. One shot for my passenger side, the other ghosted toward the rear axles. Didn't matter. I dropped that rig into gear and floored it, tires chewing gravel, the whole cab rocking as I tore down that track like the devil himself was hanging off my mud flaps. I didn't look back, not once, not until I burst onto a fork where the trees fell away. I picked a direction right, praying I wasn't driving deeper into nowhere. 10, maybe 15 minutes later, I found a gas station. Real lights, real pumps, a bored kid behind thick glass scrolling on his phone. I parked under the brightest floodlight and sat there a while, cab still rumbling, hands locked on the wheel like they were glued. When I finally stepped inside, I told the kid what happened, half out of nerves, half hoping he'd laugh and say I'd been seeing things. Instead, he just blinked. "You went near Baines Hollow?" he asked, like it was the name of some dark fairy tale. "Ain't smart, man. Folks don't come back right from out there." I pressed him for more, but he just shrugged, rang me up for coffee and a full tank. I sat in that lot for another hour before pulling back onto the road. A week later, grabbing pie and coffee at a truck stop near Montgomery, I told the story to another driver, old-timer named Gus, who'd run these roads for decades. When I told him where I'd turned off, he looked at me hard. "You sure about that exit?" "There's no cutoff near 219. No dirt track, no sign. Ain't nothing out there but timberland and deer blinds." I didn't argue. But a few weeks later, curiosity chewed me raw enough to drive it again. Mile 219. I rolled slow. Nothing. No break in the trees, no rotted sign, no shack, just endless dark pines whispering when the wind cut through. Sometimes I tell myself it was just a setup bait for a robbery or worse, but deep down it doesn't add up. The drum was a decoy. The way they moved, the way the old man found me, like they'd been waiting knowing a driver would come when the storm pushed him off route. These days, I keep a reserve tank bolted to the frame, enough diesel to limp me to the next real stop if I'm ever stuck again. I don't pull over on unlit shoulders. I don't listen to strangers with friendly grins and too many details. But some nights I dream I'm back there. Engine off gravel under my boots, the syrup smell clinging to my throat while branches crack in the dark. I always wake up before they reach me. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't slammed that door when I did. I only know I was never supposed to leave. If you've ever run back roads in the storm season, keep your tank full. And whatever you do, don't stop for anyone who tells you they know a place. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment below. I want to hear your strangest road stories too. Maybe together we'll figure out what's still waiting out there in the dark. I've been driving rigs for just about 15 years now, mostly up and down the East Coast, though. When the rate is right, I'll still take a longer haul if it gets me out of the same old warehouse loop. This happened back in November 2021, near the tail end of the month. One of those nights where the highway feels like it wants to swallow you up and keep you. I was on Route 29 in Virginia, heading southbound with a trailer full of farm equipment parts, planning to hit the rest stop near Lovingston to catch a few hours sleep. It must have been close to 2:00 a.m., the kind of hour when the fog drapes itself so thick over the road, it's like driving through wet wool. My high beams didn't do a damn thing, and the old radio had fizzled out miles ago, so it was just me. The hum of the diesel and that constant low thought that I might miss my exit if I blinked too long. Somewhere just south of the Red Hill stretch, I saw her. At first it looked like maybe a deer was about to bolt something pale on the shoulder, half smeared by the haze. But the closer I got, the clearer it was not an animal. A woman. She was standing just off the lane, both arms raised slow and steady above her head, not flailing, but moving in this rhythmic arc like she wanted to be seen without setting off alarm bells. I hit the brakes and swung my rig onto the gravel strip a few yards ahead, hazard lights blinking through the soup behind me. For a second, she just stood there in the red glow arms at her sides, now still as stone. Then she jogged up to the passenger door and rapped her knuckles on the handle. I cracked the window and asked if she was hurt. She looked young, maybe late 20s, early 30s, with long hair so pale it almost looked silver in the fog light, though the night made everything tricky. She had on ripped jeans, old sneakers, and this faded red hoodie that looked too thin for the cold. Her face was pale, too tired in a way that didn't look like it came from just missing a ride. She said her name was Hannah, and her car had quit a couple miles back. Said she'd been walking for what felt like forever, and just needed a lift to the next stop. Claimed there was a 24-hour station at the exit. I told her to climb up. She didn't hesitate, just grabbed the handrail and pulled herself inside. No purse, no phone, nothing except a backpack she kept on her lap, like it was the only thing tying her to the earth. At first I didn't think too hard about it. Folks get stranded. Maybe she didn't want to stand there in the cold, waiting for another car to notice her. We rolled on for maybe 10 minutes in silence. She kept glancing into the side mirror on her door like she was tracking ghosts back there. Then she turned to me, voice low, asked if I'd seen the black pickup behind us. I hadn't seen anything but white walls of fog and the occasional mile marker. She squeezed her hands together until her knuckles went pale. "They know where I am now," she said, and I swear my cab felt 10 degrees colder. I tried to calm her down, told her I'd keep an eye out, that no one was behind us, just empty road and cold mist. But she was somewhere else now, rocking slightly, mumbling about how she shouldn't have left, about how they always find her when she talks too loud. She'd look me dead in the eye, then flick her gaze back to the mirror so fast it made me check 2 half-expecting headlights to bloom out of the dark. Then came the questions, weird ones. If I'd ever felt like the road was bending the same mile twice. If I'd ever seen a stranger in 2 places on 2 different nights wearing the same expression but a different face. If I'd ever driven so long I forgot where I started. I told her no. Her eyes slid back to the window like that was the answer she'd guessed I'd give. We passed a crossroads that cut through the woods, just a weathered stop sign and some battered guardrails. That's when she leaned forward, peered out into the trees, and said, "It's stop here, right now. I can't go any further." I tried to talk her down, told her it wasn't safe, that we were barely 5 minutes from lights and coffee and a payphone, but she was already clawing at the door handle. eyes wide like she saw something out there. I couldn't. I barely got the truck to a crawl before she popped the latch, swung the door open, and dropped down into the shoulder brush. I called her name Hannah, but she didn't look back. She ran straight into the woods, straight into that endless gray veil, until the trees swallowed her whole. I sat there like an idiot, flashers strobing red and orange through the mist, listening for footsteps that never came. After a minute, I grabbed my mag light and stepped down, yelling into the brush. No answer. Just the drip of fog on leaves and the low idle of my truck engine. I wanted to follow. I really did. But my gut twisted every time I pictured her face right before she jumped wild and sad, and like she knew something that'd curl my spine if I asked one more question. About half an hour later, I called it in. Non-emergency line. Explained it all, name clothes the black pickup where she ran. A local deputy rolled up about 20 minutes later, cruiser lights cutting the fog to ribbons. I gave him the rundown. He listened with this tight line to his mouth, then asked, real quiet, "She say her name was Hannah?" I nodded, and he blew out this breath like he'd been bracing for it. Told me I wasn't the first trucker to see her, not by a long shot. Over the years, a dozen or more drivers had pulled over for the same woman. Sometimes she said Hannah, sometimes Chloe, sometimes Kate. Same face. Same stretch of Route 29. Same ending, she'd vanish into the trees or step off the shoulder and never be there when they turned around. Nobody reported missing. No wrecked car ever found. Nothing but cold air and the stories she left behind. I asked him if it was some sick prank local kids maybe, or a woman with problems nobody wanted to claim. He just shook his head. Said most folks around these parts figure she died on that road decades back, maybe hit hitchhiking, maybe running from something worse. But he'd heard talk she wasn't looking for a rescue, just a chance to warn the next poor soul who'd listen. After he left, I sat there in my cab with the door locked and the fog pressing on every window like a restless hand. I waited until the sun started to pale the sky before rolling south again, heart pounding at every mile marker, every break in the tree line. I didn't sleep well for a week. Every stoplight, every diner lot, I'd check my mirrors half expecting to see her standing by the taillights, waving slow, waiting for me to open the door again. I still run the East Coast, but not Route 29 at night. I reroute every single time, even if it costs me fuel and hours. If I see someone standing in that mist again, arms swaying slow and sad, I won't stop. Not because I'm cruel, but because whatever Hannah really was, I don't think she was trying to get away. I think she was trying to keep something from catching up to me instead. I used to pick up extra delivery gigs back in 2020, mostly around northern Arizona and the edge of New Mexico. Just me, my dented Subaru Outback, and whatever needed moving quick enough for someone to pay double the rate. Nothing fancy, just long hours, desert highways, and the thrill of easy cash. That October, I landed a run hauling some auto parts from Flagstaff out toward a dusty town near the New Mexico line. Should have been 3 hours in and out back before midnight. But I got greedy for time. I found this service road on my map that cut through a stretch of reservation land, said it would shave off 40 minutes. One of those shortcuts that feel smart, right up until it doesn't. The road started decent enough packed dirt, that thick red dust that clings to your tires and creeps under your nails. Late afternoon sun painting everything in rust and gold. No houses, no power lines, not even a mailbox. Just desert brush and the occasional charred tree trunk standing like a scarecrow. I'd been on that road about an hour when the Subaru started coughing. A sputter, then a hard jolt, and then my dash looked like a carnival check engine battery oil, all screaming at once. I managed to limp it to the sandy shoulder before the whole thing died. Naturally, zero signal. No towers for miles, no other cars. Just silence so heavy I could hear my heartbeat ticking like a watch. I tried climbing onto a roadside boulder, waving my phone around like an idiot. Got one bar for 30 seconds, just long enough to call for roadside help. They said it'd be at least 2 hours. So I climbed back into the car, cracked the windows for air, and tried to calm myself down. That's when I noticed them. They were maybe 25 feet off the road, 4 or 5 kids or teens. I hadn't heard them coming. They weren't walking closer, just standing there half hidden by creosote bushes, staring dead at me. Backlit by the sunset, all I could make out were dark clothes and stiff postures. I gave them a dumb little wave through the windshield, trying to look harmless. Nothing. No wave back, no whispering to each other, just staring. Then one of them cocked his head to the side real slow, like a dog trying to figure out a new sound. Another one squatted down like he was about to leap, but froze that way. I locked my doors. Thank God they'd already been down. The windows were still half open though, so I leaned over and rolled them up slow, pretending I was just adjusting the air. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. They hadn't moved closer yet, but the air felt wrong. Heavy. Then one stepped forward, a kid in a baggy hoodie. He moved in a wide circle around my car, dragging something behind him, a stick, maybe a metal rod. He scraped it along the gravel shoulder. Another one followed him, steps crunching slow and steady. Still no talking. No laughter. Just that scrape, scrape, scrape. They started tapping. First on the rear window, a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap. Then on the front passenger side. Not random either. There was a rhythm, like they were drumming out a code. When I twisted around, one of them was so close his face nearly smeared the glass. Dust-caked skin, wide eyes, and a grin that looked more like he was trying to remember how to smile than actually feeling anything. And then the noises started. High-pitched howls that didn't sound quite human, more like someone trying to mimic a coyote badly. One kid started growling this guttural rumble that made my skin crawl. But the worst part, it came from inside my car. I spun so fast I nearly punched my own seat, but the back was empty. Just my battered duffel bag on the floor. When I turned back, they were closer. Faces pressed to the glass palms flat their breath, fogging up the windows. One girl, at least I think it was a girl, stepped in front of my hood. She dropped to all fours, head cocked unnaturally sideways, then crawled under my bumper so low it looked inhuman. Another one slithered after her elbows, digging into the sand like he was burrowing. I fumbled the shifter into neutral, thinking I could coast downhill if I had to. But before I could move, headlights spilled over the hill behind me, a truck barreling straight down the service road. The moment that light hit them, they scattered, just melted backward into the scrub, not running, drifting. 1 second they were there, the next gone. The girl under my car vanished so fast, I swear she never crawled back out, just evaporated into the dark. The truck was an old Dodge, dented and loud. The driver rolled down his window, middle-aged, sunburned face, thick arms, eyes that didn't look surprised at all. He asked if I was all right. I nodded too quickly, stammered about my car. He didn't ask about the kids, just told me to grab my bag and ride with him to a station down the road. The whole ride I kept twisting around, half expecting to see those wide eyes glowing from the truck bed. The driver didn't say much, just hummed along to some static-filled country station eyes locked dead ahead. At the gas station, I stumbled out, thanked him. He just nodded and drove off. As I was dialing the tow truck again, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up young deputy named Brady Wells, maybe late 20s, polite but tired. I told him the whole thing, laughing it off like I was just spooked by desert shadows. His face drained right there under the flickering pump light. "Where'd you break down?" he asked. I told him. He sighed, rubbed his chin. Said they'd had reports for months, drivers stuck out there surrounded by groups that never said a word. No mugging, no clear robbery. Just watched them. Watched. Sometimes chased them. They don't talk, Deputy Wells told me. They just stand there. Like they're practicing. I asked if they'd ever caught anyone. He just shook his head. "Keep off that road. Locals don't use it anymore. Not after dusk." That night, I found a cheap motel off the main drag. Pushed the dresser in front of the door, kept the lamp on. I barely slept an hour, every tire on gravel outside, made my pulse jump. I quit deliveries a week later, got an office job. I still don't know what those kids were doing out there. Maybe they were messed up on something. Maybe it was a trap, or maybe something else entirely. But the thing that stays with me, the part that makes my hands shake when I think about it, is how silent they were. No demands, no threats. Just that eerie quiet, like they were waiting for me to open the door first. And maybe they're still waiting out there in the dark for the next idiot who thinks a shortcut's worth the risk. I don't usually write stuff like this online, but what happened to me last October still makes my skin crawl, and maybe putting it out there will help someone else trust their gut. My name's Lena. I was 21 at the time, a senior at university, and I'd gone down to Asheville for a long weekend with a few friends. Just a cheap break before finals, mountains, craft beer, bad decisions. The plan was to catch the 5:15 p.m. Greyhound back to campus on Sunday, but I overslept my alarm and missed it by almost an hour. There were no other buses that night, and my roommate had an early lab Monday, so she couldn't come get me either. So I made the stupid choice to use this rideshare app I'd only tried once before, Lyft Connect. It matches you with drivers who are already going your way. Seemed harmless enough. I found one last ride leaving at 7:30 p.m. A guy named Greg. His profile photo was him, maybe late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and glasses, smiling next to a Labrador. His reviews were decent. Nothing amazing, but nothing weird either. Said he was headed through Greensboro, which was exactly my route. I messaged him, and within 10 minutes he replied with his car details, a dark blue Ford Fusion. Even standing on the sidewalk waiting for him, I had this tiny knot in my stomach, a flicker of doubt. But I brushed it off, told myself I was paranoid. Greg pulled up, rolled down the window, smiled and said, "You must be Lena." The car smelled faintly like stale coffee and cheap pine air freshener. There was a travel blanket folded in the back and a big metal thermos in the console. Normal. We did the usual small talk the first 30 minutes, my major, his old job in shipping, how he missed the mountains when he moved east. He talked a lot, but it wasn't creepy. Not at first. Then he asked if I had a boyfriend. I laughed it off and said, yeah, he's kind of the jealous type, even though I was definitely single. That seemed to quiet him for a bit, but the vibe shifted. His voice dropped when he asked if I ever felt unsafe riding with strangers. Said it must be exciting being young and pretty and so trusting. I stared out the window, pretending not to hear as my pulse picked up. We'd stopped passing regular exits, and I noticed the route wasn't matching my GPS anymore. Trying to sound casual, I said, "Hey, isn't this off I-40? He shrugged, didn't look at me, and mumbled, "Shortcuts are faster at night." But we were headed deeper into the dark, away from town. My stomach turned. I told him I really needed a bathroom soon, hoping to get him to stop at a gas station, He looked at me in the mirror, gave this small grin, and said, "Oh, I know a good spot." Real private. My hands went numb. I knew then I'd screwed up. I slid my phone into my hoodie pocket so he couldn't see the screen and opened my chat with my best friend, Nora. Typed, "Something's wrong. I don't know where he's taking me." Then I remembered she had location sharing turned on. I swiped up and hit share location. I prayed she'd see it. Then I pretended to make a call. I forced my voice steady and said real loud, "Hey, babe, just checking in. Yeah, Greg just took a weird shortcut, but I'm sending you my location now. You see it." I watched his hands tighten on the wheel. For a split second, I thought he'd snap, grab my phone, or worse. But instead, he just stared ahead, silent. After maybe 30 seconds, he said under his breath, "Didn't know you had someone tracking you." I fake laughed. Yeah, my boyfriend's a total tech freak. Can't help it. We drove in tense silence after that. 5 minutes later, he veered off the main road onto some gravel shoulder. There were no lights, just woods and the buzz of cicadas. He braked, shifted into park, and turned to me with this weird half smile like he was bored. "I think you should get out here," he said flatly. I stared at him. "What you can find your own way home." He hit the unlock button. Click. It was like I wasn't even a person, just a mistake he was dropping. That look on his face, zero emotion, like I'd ruined some plan by not playing along. I stepped out slow, didn't slam the door. He waited until I was a few feet away and then peeled out so fast his tires spit gravel at my ankles. And then it was just me and the trees. One bar of service. I called Nora with shaking hands. She picked up on the first ring. She'd seen my location ping and knew something was wrong. Her older brother, bless him, lived half an hour away, and he was already on his way before I finished explaining. I sat in the gravel, hugging my knees. When I saw headlights that weren't a Ford, I almost collapsed. I told Nora's brother everything. The route, Greg's profile, the messages. He called the cops for me right there on that back road. They took my statement, got the screenshots, the app info, everything. I thought they'd shrug it off, but they didn't. 2 days later, a detective called me back. He dug into Greg's Lyft Connect account and found 3 more complaints, all from girls my age. One said Greg drove her deep into some woods and wouldn't stop until she screamed she'd jump out. Another said he'd locked the doors and just talked at her for hours, refusing to drop her off where she asked. None of them pressed charges, because nothing happened. That phrase still makes me nauseous. Nothing happened. Like you have to come out with bruises for it to count. Greg had used different cars, different dogs in his photos, always soft smiles and safe hobbies. I don't know if they ever arrested him. The detective said they were building a case. Lyft Connect banned him after I sent them my report, but they never messaged me back. Never even said sorry. They just erased him like he'd never been there. I still flinch when I open a rideshare app. I carry pepper spray and a little alarm on my keys now. Sometimes I pretend to talk on the phone if I feel the slightest vibe from someone in public. It's like that night rewired my brain. What scares me most wasn't what he did. It was how calm he was. Like he was just testing, seeing how far he could push. Anyway, that's it. I'm safe. I got luckier than I deserve. But I lie awake some nights wondering how many other girls he tried this on. How many didn't realize they were a test run? If you're reading this, if you ever feel that gut twist, listen. You're not dramatic. You're not rude. You might be the only person keeping you alive. If you stayed till the end, share this with someone who travels alone. It might keep them safe one day.